Hi, welcome back to my channel, and this is an important video. I get asked this quite a lot. Can you start a community interest company if you have bad credit or one of your directors has bad credit? So I'm going to go into this video and talk to you about various different scenarios which can affect you if you've got a community interest company. I'm also going to suggest some ways that you could get around some of these problems and obstacles. So before I jump into that video, please hit the subscribe button and subscribe to this channel. And if you would like to know more from me about my services, whether it be my course, how to set up a CIC and get grant funded in 4 months, or my memberships, or my bid writing, or you want to book a phone call with me, help you set up your CIC that way. So you can do all of that over on my website. So the link is in the description of this video. So all that aside, let's get into it. So lots of us have bad credit, world is difficult. Some of us come from disadvantaged backgrounds. Some of us have made some mistakes, or maybe got with a partner and made some mistakes or whatever. So lots of people have these complexities. So let's run through what bad credit scenarios could be and how they could affect you if you want to start a community interest company. So number one, I'm going to hit up straight away with the worst case scenario, which is bankruptcy. Now, bankruptcy actually means that you cannot be a director for a year. So if you are bankrupt, you have to wait a whole year for that to go past, and then you can be a director. So, but I understand it does stay on your credit file for 6 years. So you may have to, although you can be a director, it may still affect you, for instance, getting a bank account and getting grant funding for that first 6-year period until it moves off your credit file. But in terms of the first year, that's when you definitely can't be a director. Now, in that scenario, I would suggest you don't be a director, you get 3 other directors and you just stay off it. So that's one scenario, is that you just, you can still start a CIC, but you won't be able to be a director. But you could still have a lead role in your CIC. You could be the project manager, you could be the CEO, you call yourself whatever you like. So you could be employed, so as long as you've got maybe 3 people who are very trustworthy, because they will technically then be running your company. So you'll need to make sure you can trust them. So that's the bankruptcy. Next one is CCJs. So that is when a court orders you to pay somebody back after a dispute. So that is a court order. So a CCJ is quite serious. It remains on your credit file for 6 years. So with that scenario, you can be a director, but it will be very difficult for you to open a bank account. So the community bank accounts will be difficult. Most banks, mainstream banks, will turn you down, and you have to have a mainstream bank to be able to set up a CIC. So that is an issue. So if you've got a CCJ, to be honest, it is going to be a big issue, a little bit like the bankruptcy situation, but you could be a director, but you wouldn't really want to be, because it would affect you getting a bank account and the grant funding. So again, the option is that you don't, maybe you could, I suppose the options are either you put other people on as directors, or the other alternative is, and I've got another video on this, is you start on your own. You just open a little Cash Plus account, or one of those little internet accounts, and you just roll without grant funding. So there's lots you can do without grant funding with the CIC, and there's still lots of benefits to having a CIC. So again, I've got other videos on that, so do watch those. So if you do want to roll with that model, you could start the CIC with the CCJ. You could get like a little internet account, like a Cash Plus account. You could just roll, getting money in yourself. And then once that's come off your credit file in up to 6 years, then you could take other directors and start going for grant funding. So it's a bit of a long process that way, but still it's possible, and you could still have a great career that way. So next one is just like general bad credit. Like if you've just got like a low credit score, that's not really an issue. It's when it's bad. So when it's bad, that's when it affects you opening a bank account, and then also can affect you with grant funders. So the next one I'm going to talk about is a CFS warning. Now, not everyone knows what a CFS warning is. Basically a fraud marker. Now, these can happen really easily, and it could not be your fault at all. It's really easy for companies like banks, for instance, to put CFS warnings on someone. For instance, I had somebody who was going to be my director. She'd moved from address to address. She'd been homeless for a little while, so she'd moved around. And the bank, actually, when she tried to open a bank account, because they saw she was linked to several addresses, because she had some mail going to her parents and somewhere else. They actually put a fraud marker on her. They put a CFS warning on her. So she had to apply to get it removed, which is really long-winded and annoying. You might even have to go to your MP about it. It's that annoying because it can be quite hard to get that removed. So sometimes if people have been a victim of fraud, or like I said, they've just moved addresses and a bank has flagged them, or a company's put it on for some other reason. Okay, so CFS warnings are quite serious because it means that grant funders will check for that, and they won't generally give you grant funding unless you're lucky and they haven't done a check. But I know Lottery did do a check, because on that particular director that I had, they checked, they said, no, you have a director with a CFS warning, so they rejected my application, so I then had to have her removed. So yes, that can definitely affect you. But again, there are ways around it. CFS warnings also come off after 6 years. You can apply to get them removed if it was unjustly put on. So there are some ways around it. If you want to know if you've got something on like a CFS on your credit file, you can get a credit report, and there are specific ones that actually will reveal CFS warnings, because not all of them do. You can also apply for CFS, and they can actually ask. It's a free thing. You just upload your ID online and they basically send you a credit report and will let you know if you've got one. And the other one is an IVA. So an IVA is a voluntary debt agreement, essentially. Most of you know what that is. It's when you haven't gone bankrupt, you've done basically some voluntary payments, but it means that stays on your credit file for 6 years. So with that, you can actually operate absolutely fine. So it does give you bad credit, but you can still open some bank accounts. Some won't allow you, some will. For instance, I know NatWest allows you to have an IVA and be a director of a CIC. So some do, whereas I know the Co-op didn't. So you have to just find a bank that does allow it. So some do, and absolutely fine when it comes to grant funding. So that's not a problem. So I hope that was really useful, and like I said, life has all these little problems, doesn't it? So, but I don't want you to feel deterred. I don't want you to feel down about your situation. And it is a poverty trap, the whole credit system. And I just want you to feel like you can get out of it. There is a way out of it. Stay positive, and try to do some of the suggestions that I've given about manoeuvring around that. If you've got any questions, go over to my website. You can just ask me a question for free in the chat box there, or if you want to book a phone call with me, you can.